So some people, some people definitely might be afraid to start working on their mental health, depending on what they're going through. Some might struggle more than others, but one reason is that because people might feel like they're going to have to really confront whatever it is that they're struggling with. So, what would you say to someone, I guess, who has taken the taken the leap to work on your mental health, who might be thinking, "Oh my God, what if I'm going to have to really confront my deepest fears?"
I would say that that language is not maybe the most helpful because it sounds maybe a little bit not it's not catastrophic, but it's not helpful in the sense that it's not really priming you to be able to see it as a positive, powerful change in your life. It's more like, oh no, I'm going to have to confront this thing. And then to answer the other part of your question, I would say that that person is really brave because a lot of people, they're stuck in learned helplessness thinking style and they don't even realize it. So if you can overcome that first step, kind of, I think that's really well. It makes me think of the success triad that we have: the beliefs, effort, and resources. So if you have that belief right off the bat, then and we know that we're going to give you the resources, and all you have to do then is put the effort in. So when you do put the effort in, we know that you're going to be successful for sure. So I would change the language. I would say instead of confronting your deepest fears, as in the question, it's not really like that. It's not exposure therapy. It's not something that you suddenly have to confront all at once. It's a gradual, stepped process, at least with what we do, um, where it doesn't ever feel like that. I
Yeah.
think maybe with traditional therapy, it can feel like that from the minute you go in. They're starting to talk about the problem. They're not like compared to what we do is we start building up the core foundations of your mental health rather than forcing the person to just confront something immediately. So they never even realize actually that they've confronted it.
Mm. So, yeah, because if you just that first day when you start working on whatever it is, if you just go confront whatever it is that you're consulting for, it's not going to do anything because you still have the unhelpful ways of thinking, which are what are causing this to begin with. So if you're afraid of, I have to always go back to the spider example. If you go expose yourself to a spider on the very first day, you still have a catastrophic way of thinking, a negative way of thinking, a black and white way of thinking. So you're going to interpret that entire situation as the worst thing in the world, and all that's going to do is confirm that that was the worst thing in the world. So when you say working on your foundations, that's exactly what we mean by saying, like, lowering lowering the level of catastrophic thinking and lowering the level of negative thinking. This way, if you did decide to expose yourself, which is not something that's necessary the way that Lauren and I um, work, but if you did want to, then at that point, you'll be able to look at things with a realistic appraisal. Okay, the spider really isn't that scary. It's really not that gross. It's just a spider. It's just the way I was thinking about it. So,
Yeah, it's a completely different approach where the client doesn't ever feel that initial big confrontation. So they don't even realize how do you, it doesn't feel like that. It never feels like that. It doesn't matter what the person is working on. It's never going to feel like that. with this type of intervention.
Mm.
With the other ones, as I've understood and I've gone through, it definitely feels like that. And you're really focusing in and honing in on the problem over and over. It's almost worse because you're, in a sense, you're brooding about and ruminating about the problem rather than strengthening the core foundations and the roots of what, like you said, with the thinking styles. You can't, that thinking about it in a sense of confronting like your deepest fears is like pushing somebody off of a cliff when they don't have the skill set to handle whatever that
Yeah.
is. Like trying to think about a metaphor, maybe like pushing a baby chick out of a nest without the being, well, what it really is a skill set that you're developing. And do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So it's so much more than just overcoming. Let's say you have OCD. It's so much more than just if you're working on this stuff the right way. It should be so much more than just I need to get rid of this OCD. You get rid of the OCD or you overcome it by raising your self-esteem, lowering your social anxiety, and feeling more in control of your life, and having the belief that you can tolerate life when you can't control it.
Yeah.
That's when these things start to fade away, and that's what you meant by foundations. So when when the recording's over, if anybody's wondering, that's what we meant. So all right, so I have another question. So what I think people who want to try some kind of like the next or new intervention or the first intervention or whatever to try to overcome whatever they are dealing with might be thinking, well, what if I fail? What if I'm the one who is too complex? What if I'm the one who just can't get over this? What would you say to that person?
I think every single person has that thought initially. Um, and again, it's probably from one of the unhelpful thinking styles or a combination of them, and especially with low self esteem. You really don't have a belief in yourself at that point, nor do you likely believe that you're worthy of or deserving of that life. It might feel even so foreign to you that you can't even imagine what it might be like to be that person that in the back of your mind you know you want to be, or that
Yeah,
you see other people becoming. It just feels so far away and so foreign, and I can absolutely relate to that and understand that, and you don't have to worry about that. Um, that's not something that you're going to encounter with what we do. Because as you said, and I really like how you worded it, those thinking styles will just start to fade once you are aware of them and know how to challenge them and know how to deal with them. So you trust, in a sense, you're trusting, I don't want to say trust the process, trusting the research and the predictability. Um, it's, in a sense, it's a leap of faith. And I mentioned this to Rob, in when you first start working with a client, they, in a sense, are leaning on your hope because you
mm.
might not even have any at that point. And I can completely relate to that. And that's where the sense of skepticism and not paranoia comes in, but sort of like distrust.
Yeah,
And he speaks to that too on one of the Emetophobia podcasts. It makes complete sense why somebody would feel that way. And it's not just emetophobia. It can be like weight loss because you might have been in that cycle of failing over and over and over because you didn't have, maybe you had the beliefs and the effort, but you didn't have the right resource, or you had the resource and the effort, but you didn't have the right belief. You know, it could be a
yeah,
number
yeah.
of reasons. But that's certainly not a reason to never try. There's so many people that have talked about, like, I'm trying to think of some examples. I don't know if it was Einstein or just different people who had to fail many, many, many times and get back on the horse in order to finally succeed. And you only have one life to live, and you're going to regret it. You're going to regret if you don't push yourself and at least try,
Yeah.
because the worst case scenario is you're just going to be back where you
Yeah.
started from.
So you're thinking of Thomas Edison. He said,
The,
I didn't fail 10,000 times. I found 10,000 ways that a light bulb won't work.
yeah, I remember that one too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think Mark Twain has a quote similar. But yeah, it's life is a series in the sense of obstacles and uh, challenges and hurdles, but it it's pushing ourselves to look, look at them as opportunities rather than just running away from them. That's what makes somebody thrivey versus non-thrivey. And I know that's a really hard thing to understand when you're first starting, especially for some people that have a lot of those thinking styles. But
yeah.
you know, you're gonna we're gonna deal with all of
Yeah.
them when.
The other thing too, and there's really no like soft way to say it, so I'll just say it, is that if you've tried a bunch of stuff that is not based on evidence, I won't name specific things, but if you tried a bunch of things that just somebody told you it'll work or whatever, and there's no evidence, there's no proof, there's no studies, you can't look at something that is based on hundreds of research studies and clinical experience the same way.
Yeah, yeah,
It just doesn't make sense. And that's, I think, why probably maybe it's a part of why both of us found success with what we do now is because it's not based on anybody's opinion. It's
right.
based on what a bunch of smart people decided worked, and then a bunch of even smarter people reviewed those findings and said, yeah, that works. So it's not magical, it's not, opinion or anything like that. Um,
Yeah,
so what about if somebody doesn't feel like, what if they're afraid to spend the money to work on their mental health? What would you, I don't know, what would you say to them? What do you think? What was your experience?
I would say again that I absolutely understand. I would absolutely understand that skepticism. I would 100% get it. It makes sense to me. However, that's not a reason to stop trying. You need to keep trying. Um, you know, and I know for a fact that if you put the effort in, the right amount and the right kind, that you will succeed. And that's what I say to anybody who is messaging me in the inbox or anything. It's not something that you need to be afraid. It's because they're not sure it's going to work. That's the only reason why people don't sign up or do something, because they're inundated with programs and offers, and I mean constantly on TV and in your inbox and unsolicited text messages
Yep.
with whatever it has to do with, and you're just living in a world full of being constantly solicited to, and it's like, well, how do I discern, how do I pick out which one is really going to work for me?
Yep.
So that makes complete sense to me, but the bottom line is they need to understand that it's going to work, and that goes back to the predictability and the evidence that
Mm.
you know you can, well, like for example, true science is based on observation. So if over 60,000 people plus have succeeded, you're not just going to be the one offer who doesn't. I know people like to think that,
Yeah.
but that's not going to be the. I thought that. I remember the first time I messaged on Facebook, I was just a wreck. I was panicked, and I was like, yeah, but this, yeah, but that, and they were so encouraging to me. They were just like, well, you've done this, this, and this, and you've gone this far, so we think that you're going to do really great with this, and you're going to easily overcome. And
Yeah.
hearing that was really helpful to me. It just really gave me a profound sense of hope that I didn't have, because some people are just so far gone in those thinking styles.
And I kind of was too. I feel like a lot of people were. was like, you know what? I'm gonna try one last thing. I don't even care anymore. This is the last thing, and then I will at least this point know pretty much tried everything. And one of two things are gonna happen. I'm going to still just have like panic attacks and anxiety for the rest of my life and whatever, or I won't. And fortunately, it was the latter. But I think everybody probably feels feels that to a greater or lesser extent.
Yeah, that's part of it. That skepticism and that fear of failure and the hesitancy to work on your mental health is all part of the reason why your mental health is not good. It's a cycle. It's
That's a good point.
yeah, so they're all connected. So you just have to step outside of that and understand that. And that's really what's helpful about having a coach is somebody on the outside objectively explaining that to you, so that you don't feel you can kind of see where you're at. You can kind of be on the outside looking in and saying, okay, I have, you don't tell them, for example, that they have all these thinking styles, but you can give them that sense of hope, like, hey, like my coach, she was like, you don't have to believe me, but this is what the research says, and
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
what's going to happen. And I was like, okay, they just need that sense of like an anchor to sort of like take the first step, I think.
yeah.
The first step is the hardest in any of the questions that you asked me. It's the attitude. It's believing that there is a way to overcome whatever is holding you back, that limitation.
Mm, yep.
Um,
All good points.
let me, okay, there's only one person in here. Okay, I'm going to,
You just froze. I don't know what you just said.
can you hear me?
Yep, now again.
Okay, I'm just going to pause really quick to go to your questions. I only
Okay.
wrote I only wrote mine down really quick, or I can just ask you something else. Um,
Do whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter to me.
I should have written them down. Sorry. Uh, what? Let's see. Do you remember? I guess for you, like, what was the? Did you have skepticism? Did you have something holding you back, especially with the price? Being in America where we have the healthcare that we have and we can go to therapy and things like that. What made you decide to do the program?
Uh, I think so. What made me do it was just seeing the coach that I ended up choosing, just seeing his Instagram posts, and just being like, this guy knows his stuff. So good job, Joe, if you're out there listening to this. It was just like he knows his stuff. I want to work with this guy, and
Yeah.
that's all. That's really all it was. And it's probably because he sounded believable. He sounded knowledgeable. He didn't sound like anybody that I had ever tried to get help from before. It just sounded different, and I took the leap. I think just because I was like, you know, what the hell else am I gonna do? Let's just try this, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, whatever. But like all the testimonials, I'm like, there's got to be somebody at least one of those people has to be worse than me, and if they're saying, "Oh, this was fantastic," like I'm going to make this work. So a lot of it was because I was like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make it work. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
so hopefully that makes sense. But yeah.
Yeah. You already had a thrivey attitude.
Kinda, yeah. I just aimed my high desire for wanting to control towards something very productive, which was
Hmm.
working to the best of my ability that I possibly could from somebody who was thriving. Just he was the mentor, and I was just like, "Yep, you tell me to do it once, I'm going to do it 10 times. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
This is it. I'm doing this." Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I think, wow. I think that's actually a positive attribute to having high desire for control. Is you're just like, that's how I was. I was like, I'm not going to give up.
Yeah.
I haven't found the thing yet. I'm frustrated. I've spent a lot of money, a lot of time, but I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to just accept this. And I think that's a really good starting place to
Yep.
have that attitude.
It definitely is. And I can see why people would be like, I know there's one client who spent over $40,000 on different interventions until she found us and was like, oh my God, it actually works. So those people are out there. I didn't spend that much. But I can see why people would be like, oh yeah, it's just the next thing that is going to work. But I think the other thing that the other thing was that I was like, how can they know? How are they able to tell me that this is what the price is going to be and this is when you're going to feel better?
Yeah.
That's what really hooked me was that I was I like I know the time frame that this is going to
Yeah.
work, which was weird to me. Um, but again, it was based on the research. It was based on the research that this is a roundabout time, the 6 to 8 weeks. It's not like, oh, on week 7, this is when you feel like you're thriving. But it was the fact that it was based on
Yeah.
research, in that I knew the costs up front, no surprises. I don't know. I'm careful with my money, so I wouldn't just throw it at anything.
Well, yeah,
So
I know. I was the same. I was actually, I tell people all the time, I was like, listen, I was in debt, okay? But this was so important to
yeah,
me that, and it was the first time that, like you said, you heard somebody that can actually understand and relate with what you were saying. It's not just, I don't know if you had been to a therapist or anything like that before. I mean, I had even gone to like outpatient therapy.
mm,
I've been to a lot of serious interventions and things in high school and things, like that. And it was like coloring pictures of things. And it was just so unhelpful.
yeah,
And when you hear the language and you hear somebody actually speak to what it is that you're suffering with, it does give you that sense of hope that there is an answer finally. And that
yeah,
predictability, like you were saying, it's so key. It's so important that it's not an open-ended forever, who knows when. Um,
yeah,
I know we talked about that last time, but it's so important to compare what this is to what is out there because, and Rob talks about it like the Henry Ford quote, I think,
yeah,
where he's saying it's not even on the same page. Like a motor car has nothing to do with like horses,
yeah,
you know. Um,
yeah,
can't even compare. The two aren't related. So
yeah,
it's important that we differentiate what this is and what you're going to get out of it. The
yeah.
the what do you call it? The value proposition. The
Yeah, could be that. I told somebody the other day, I said it was, I said our business model. I said, we want your experience to be so freaking incredible that at the end of our time together, you not only say, I feel amazing and I don't need you anymore, but you cannot stop telling everybody about this because it's going to help more people.
yeah.
And we don't want to work with you forever. That you don't want to depend on somebody else, a coach. You want to get feeling good and thriving on your own and be self-sufficient and then tell everybody. And that's how we're going to change the world.
I was thinking on this last trip to Puerto Rico when I was talking out loud to myself or in my head or I was challenging or did like when I was on the ferry, I was trying to distract myself
Yeah,
because I had some thoughts and I said, well, you wouldn't be having these thoughts if there wasn't a belief behind
yeah,
behind the thought. So what is the belief that you have right now? And I'm sitting there talking to myself and at one point, I started to distract myself because I didn't like the feelings I was creating. And I was like, well, what's better? You need to challenge this. You need to challenge it instead of distracting because when you're distracting yourself, you're not enjoying your life. Like, in another example I was thinking of, I went out snorkeling and it was like 20, 30 feet and there was no one around. It was pretty dangerous actually. And you would just see these figures kind of every once in a while come out from the shadows, the darkness, and you wouldn't know what it is. And your heart starts racing. You know, it's the current's really strong. You lift your head up, there's no one around. You just see these things come out, and it might be something so beautiful like that eagle ray, and you're like, okay, you calm down. Or it might be like I turned around at one point, there was a barracuda just staring at me, like 5, 6 foot. And so you just don't know. You feel the sense of vulnerability.
Yep.
And you have these options when you're in those situations where you can distract or challenge yourself. But I realized in that moment that the life that I was living before I learned to thrive was I would have pushed myself to go out there, but I wouldn't have enjoyed it
Yeah.
because I would have been just trying to figure out how to endure and how to get through it.
Yep.
Same with the ferry. I would have just been like, instead of enjoying or living in that present moment, I would have been like, how do I get out of, how do I just tolerate and cope
Yep.
with this instead of enjoying the actual snorkeling? And that's the difference between my life before and now is, yeah, I would have pushed myself to go, but I wouldn't have enjoyed it because I would have been like, how do I get back to shore? What if this happens? You know, so I had to really have that skill set where I was like, okay, you know that there's likely no sharks out here, right? And barracudas, even if they chase you back to shore, you're going to be okay. And we weren't able to bring dive knives on the ferry, so we didn't have any protection. So I'm just like swimming out there, like.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to enjoy this. So I pushed myself to stay longer than I would have before.
Yep.
And I did go back, but I kind of stayed along the shoreline. But I think that's pretty reasonable for the situation that I was in. I mean, if something were to happen, there's no cell service, there's no one around, you
Yeah.
know. So that I was proud of myself for doing that. And but my whole point in this story and explaining this is that, to your point, we want the client to leave and end up being a coach to themselves. You're
Yeah.
your own coach and your own best friend and your own mentor, your own support system. You don't
Yeah.
depend on anybody else. It's all internal, and you work through these problems. And that was the first time I did something like that in a long time. So it's a chance, it's an opportunity to practice that skill set. So you're going to create a little bit of anxiety the first time that you might feel nauseous, or that you are out in the middle of nowhere, or that you're in somewhere that has riptides or
Yeah.
current. You know, that's fine. That's normal. But when you have the ability to coach yourself and you don't need to, you know, call up your therapist or text somebody or
Yeah.
reach out to somebody, especially with emetophobia. You're not like, can you help me with this? Or, hey, can you talk real quick? Or um, whatever it is, you know, and you realize that you're doing this on your own and you're coaching yourself.
Yeah.
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
Is you
And
take the
you had, I want to go back a minute because so much that screws us up is not having perspective, and it screws me up like pretty much every day. It just I get tripped up for a second and then I stop. But you, you swimming around with barracudas and all these things that could hurt you and being scared is a pretty darn normal thing to feel.
yeah.
And so some people who think in a black and white way, when they're like, all right, so I'm working on my mental health, like nothing should scare me anymore. Like that's just ridiculous and that's just never going to be the case. But you were able to clearly differentiate between forcing yourself to do something in the past and hating every second of it versus something still is pretty scary, but you can enjoy the experience with the realistic appraisal. Like nothing's probably going to happen. If it does, I'll figure it out one way or another. So,
Yeah, and sometimes it's, you know, painful. Like when I fell and I cut my hand open and I had to tolerate that pain all week long. It's kind of like I thought about Sophie's video where she tried snowboarding and I think she broke her arm or wrist the first time and she was like, I still did it.
yeah,
I still in a sense, you're still seizing the day. You're still trying. You put the effort in. You weren't afraid of failing. And I think that's what makes life worth living, and that's what's important. It's if you shrink back and then you're on your deathbed and you realize all the things you didn't do because you were afraid of failure, you didn't really live. And I thought, yeah, but sometimes avoidance does make sense because you don't want to get your arm taken off.
Yeah,
Like there are surfers who've gotten their arms taken off, and then that can seriously affect the rest of your life. But you, each person can evaluate. We want to give them self agency. We want to give that person the ability to decide: do I want to avoid this? Is it worth it to me? It was worth it to me. I really
yeah,
wanted to see the sea turtles,
yeah,
and I did. And I'm so happy that I pushed myself through the barracuda twice in order to do that. And actually, I kind of liked that sense of fear, that sense of unknown, that sense of vulnerability. It made me feel alive in the moment, and it made me, well, not make me, but it gave me something outside of the mundane, in and out of your job and things like that. It's those moments in life that are what you're going to remember and
yeah,
are who make you stronger and empower you. And each time you do that, you become a different person. We should never be the same person yesterday or today that we
mm,
were yesterday. And it's those
mm-hmm.
experiences. And it's okay to be uncomfortable sometimes. I created a little anxiety on the way out to the snorkel trip
Yeah,
on the boat, and I was able to get perspective, like you said, you're coaching yourself. And that was so important for me and vital because I didn't have that skill set in the past. And I would have taken that little seed of anxiety that I created and just, it would have been blown out of proportion and the whole day would have been crap. And I'm so glad that I didn't do that. I stopped in that moment and I was like, you're just creating this, sense of, because you get that sense of like IBS in your stomach and you start having those racing thoughts and
yeah,
rumination. And I said, you're not enjoying this. It's beautiful out here. Look at the mountains. Look at the sun. It's a perfect day. You're going to the most beautiful beach in the entire world. Like, don't, there's no reason for you to be feeling like this. And so what if you throw up?
yeah,
Like, so what? A lot of people get sick. Who cares? You throw
yep,
up and then you go snorkel and it's going to be great.
yeah,
And it's having that skill set now that I'm like, it's like the anxiety just goes like that. And you're like, yes. And then you just feel so much more powerful.
yeah, yeah. And I love the fact that like there's like no shortage of like good examples like when we're talking. So like that right there could have went the opposite way, and you could be like, this is just as bad as I thought it was going to be. This really is horrible. I knew it. I shouldn't have got on this ferry. This is awful. The whole vacation is ruined. And then that's it. It's
Yeah.
ruined. You told yourself it's ruined. Everything's crazy. You are thinking of it in a catastrophic way, and you just ruined the vacation and probably created a phobia of being on boats, and that's
Yeah.
it. So it's insane that like in that moment you can go one of two ways, and that's literally all it takes to like change how you're gonna be living in the next couple of minutes or even years. That's just crazy to me.
Yeah. And each time you process it in a strong, powerful way, you get stronger and you're less afraid the next time. So, like, I hadn't been on a plane in quite some time, and I had talked to James a little bit about um, just some of the fears that I was still kind of thinking through with planes is
Yep.
like you're trapped and like having an issue like I in Crohn's disease, you have a sense of urgency and pain a lot. And I was like, yeah, but they tell you to sit down and you have to strap in and it could be 45 minutes or you might be stuck on the tarmac for 3 hours and they yell at you to sit down. And he kind of helped challenge me and think through that. So this time on the plane, I started feeling a little bit of like unease in my stomach pretty soon on into a 3 hour
Yep.
flight. And I was like, what am I going to do with this? And I thought through some of the points that he had made with me. And again, you get that perspective, you challenge those things, and the anxiety just goes.
Yeah.
And um, and again, you don't want to give your power away. You don't want to give that trip away. You don't want to, you have that choice in that moment. Like, is this going to be a good flight or not? Am I going to be scared and shaking in the back of this flight for 3 hours and miserable? Or am I going to read a book and look out and see this incredible view? And with that, I thought to myself, for thousands and thousands of years, people have been here and never have they had the experience of being, we were almost 40,000 feet in the air.
Yep.
And look, people are shutting their things and they're sleeping, and that's fine. But I thought, what about all the humans that have wondered, what is it like to be that high in the air,
Yeah.
and to see the clouds, and to see the sunset, and to see the sunrise, and these incredible, I looked out and I filmed it. I saw these storms over the distance, and I was like, this is an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Why would I let a little stomach ache take away from this gift? This is a powerful experience, and we just take advantage of a lot of those things in our lives. And why do we give our power away to anxiety, depression? It's all up to us. What are we going to do with that? It really is up to you how that's going to go, you know?
But that's the part that flips the switch. People don't realize that. I didn't realize it. I thought I had all those crazy disorders, panic disorder, all that crap. You think you have no control over anything. You think that all this stuff is just external to you. Oh, my stomach is feeling, the flight's ruined. I'm screwed. This sucks. The flight is ruined. And then you realize that you're creating the thoughts. You might even be creating the sensations
Yeah.
of your stomach hurting, and you can stop creating them. And people don't realize that, understandably, until they find the right thing that helps them, which is what we do. But that's literally all it is. It's just realizing, again, in that moment, you made the decision, no, I'm going to enjoy this, versus I'm going to like have this be the worst experience. That's it. It's just building up the skill set to even stop for a second and be like, wait, hang on, hang on. It's not happening to me. It's my thoughts. I can stop this. You stopped it. And then you were taking pictures and videos of storms.
Yeah. But I do want to talk about something really quick, because I think a lot of the fear that emetophobes or people maybe with a fear of flying have is that social anxiety. And you know what? There is a real element to that. And I want to use another example. I could talk about a lot of the examples from the trip. I went up, I got up, and I had that initial thought because there was a guy and I didn't want to keep bothering him. So I was like trying to like figure out how least amount of times to get up. And then I'm like, just who cares? Who cares? You're never going to see this person again. I'm sure they don't mind. He's not even sleeping, you know, again, challenging. But so I got up, and then Johnny got up, and Johnny was in the bathroom a long time. And he was like, oh, it was small and it was bumpy and this and that. And the funny thing was, I had to wait for him to get up so that I could sit back down because of the other guy. And the flight attendant was kind of rude about it. He was like making fun of him. He was like, in Spanish, he was like, oh, what is he doing? Doing his nails in there? And there is a sense of people sometimes being obnoxious, or sometimes not. I don't know. Sometimes people aren't the nicest, and that's okay. Who cares if they make fun of you? Who cares if you're in there too long? Who cares if whatever it is? You know, it's all about you feeling powerful in that situation. Kind of like when Rob was talking about his, I think it was his daughter at the sleep.
Oh yeah, going in the bathroom
with the IBS. And again, there was another time, because I thought, well, what's the worst case scenario? You're gonna have to get up and run if, or what if you're sick or something, and you'll have to get up and run when everybody's like, when the seatbelt sign is on, you know. And there's a couple funny skits too about that I found on, what is it? Key and Peele do a funny one on that. And it's funny to, you know what? It's funny to make fun of it. But I gotta send you that clip. It's really funny.
I love them.
uh, and where was I going with that? Oh, there was a guy next to me one time, and he was sick, and he had to get up and run to the bathroom, and
Mm.
he didn't care. He didn't care that they were yelling at him. He just went anyway, and I
Yeah.
was like, good for you. You know what? Like, there's no reason to create anxiety about that, whether it's a fear of flying, IBS, emetophobia, just regular panic
Yeah.
anxiety, just social anxiety. Um, just do what do what you need to do. You have
Yeah.
to take care of you. It's a bodily function. I don't know why there's so much social anxiety around these things.
Because they're just nonsense beliefs that were pushed onto us when we were young. I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about it, we talk about it a lot of times about like girls can't fart. You're supposed to be a pretty little princess. No farting, no spitting, none of that. They even have the book where everybody poops, right? It's just all nonsense. That it's just a belief, like everything else. It's just a
Yeah.
belief.
Yeah. And again, it's interesting how there's so much social anxiety tied to a lot of these fears. I was thinking about that a lot on the trip, and I was thinking about other people and how they process things. So another example would we decided to go on a bioluminescent bay kayak tour at night,
Oh,
and
cool.
sometimes like I'll just sign myself up for stuff like this. I was like that before I learned to thrive. I just again it was kind of miserable for me because I didn't have the skill set, but I
Yeah,
still wanted to do all the things and I didn't want to miss out on life, but I didn't enjoy it the same.
yeah,
But this time around, I'm really keen on listening to like other people, what they're thinking, what they're saying, how they're processing it. And I was really glad I signed myself up for this. I had no idea what I was getting into. And I'm not usually nervous, but I started to feel a sense of nervousness when we showed up. It was pitch black. You know, I know some Spanish, but it's not like I'm not fluent, and most people are just speaking Spanish. I didn't know where even the contact point
yeah.
was. It was a little bit overwhelming. And when we got there, the way that they described the trip was a lot more scary than I thought. And I was listening to the other people, and they were saying, like in Spanish, that they had fear and that they were nervous and that they didn't know what to expect. And it was really interesting how I thought everybody around me was fine. And it was just me creating a little bit of like, what's going to happen? I'm going to be on this tour for 2 hours. What if I have to go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
What if, I don't even know. I just started getting some of those thoughts that I had to deal with. And hearing other people just talk about it, I was like, you know what? It's kind of natural. You don't know what you're getting into. You don't know
Yeah.
what this is going to be like.
You can't
It's
see
fine.
anything.
No, and it was like that. You
Yeah.
you went out there, and it was pitch black in like a bay at night that had like a considerable amount of current to it, and you had to walk out. You had to leave all of your stuff behind. You couldn't even bring a cell phone, and you had to walk out in a cold bay to the kayaks. So you're getting like up to your waist in water.
Yeah.
You can't see anything. There's bull sharks. Who knows. And everybody's like getting into their kayaks. He was like, oh, two people just flipped on the last one in the middle of the bay at night. I'm like, oh no. They don't know how to row. They don't know what they're doing. And it's
Mm.
kind of funny to see how people work it out. Like we were just fine.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to see how other people who don't have those skill sets were really struggling. And the tour director told us that when we got off, he's like, "Oh, you guys are still together. Everything's okay. You didn't fight." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He said, "I can't tell you how many people end up screaming at each other, fighting in the bushes, and like one with the couple, one of them ends up getting an Uber and leaves."
Oh,
I'm
wow.
like, "Oh, okay." Because when you go into situations like that where you're challenged to do something you've never done before, it's really uncomfortable. It's it's not scary, but you have no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
You have to manage it. You have to manage your emotions. You have to manage your reactions. And it's interesting how many people don't, and how many people. Well, I was going to say can't, but I guess it's
Yeah.
just don't.
Most people don't. They
Yeah,
don't know what they don't know. That's really what it is. You just think that that's normal life. I thought,
Yeah,
I just had panic attacks. That's it. That's it. They don't know what they don't know.
yeah. But the skill sets kind of, it's not just about panic and anxiety. It gives you
Right.
this, you learn the skill sets to just do new things that you've never done before, or manage a situation being really, like you said in the beginning of the call, you said kind of tuning down or calming down those thinking styles. When you're able to do that, it helps you in your relationships. It helps you with traveling and new
Yeah.
experiences like this. Um, or if you're in a situation like an emergency situation that you have to deal with, you're able to then stay calm. In fact, a lot of the skill sets that we talk about uh, are necessary in what do you call it, like military training and things like that, which is interesting.
Mm, mm, yeah. 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 It's so much more than just overcoming, panic or whatever it is. The kid that I'm working with right now, who's 17, I've told him a bunch of times, like, this is so much more than just overcoming being a little bit obsessive. Like, he plays hockey, he's 17, like, he's going to be a better teammate. He's going to be able to give better presentations in school because he's going to have higher self-esteem and lower social anxiety. And then when he goes off to college, he's going to be able to give better presentations, things like that. That's what really matters. It's not the one-off panic attack that you have like every 3 months. It's the every single day going out in the world and not caring what people are thinking about you and feeling like you can do like take charge of the day, and if something comes up you'll figure it out. That's what it's about. The other stuff is just, yeah, it's nice to not have panic attacks anymore, whatever it may be, but it's the other stuff really.
Yeah, those are just an added benefit. And I know that like when you first start the program and everything, you're really hyper focused on getting rid of this thing that's been limiting you and holding you back and causing you pain. But when you're done, you don't even, it's just like you said, you're confident, you can get better grades, you can try things you've never
Mm,
tried before. You can really live your life. You're free to live your life and have that self agency where you're not
yeah.
afraid of anything.
Yep.
I mean, it's a gift to never be afraid of anything, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I call it like superpowers. It feels like you have superpowers once you get to the level of feeling like you're in control and you can tolerate not being in control and having high self-esteem, all that stuff. Because you look around, like you were saying in your example, people are freaking out as they go about their lives. They're freaking out about everything. But once you get to the point where you're not freaking out and you can just kind of laugh at everybody and know, I know exactly why they are. They're probably a perfectionist. They're probably thinking a
Right.
black and white way. You feel like a superhuman.
Yeah. It's not that anything won't happen.
Oh yeah, of
No.
course.
Because like I was thinking about that like secondary control on my Colorado trip and this trip because Johnny was driving and the driving in Puerto Rico is pretty much everyone's drunk. They don't they go right through red lights, like straight right through red lights. They some of the most of the lights are out. So
Yep.
people it would be like a nightmare for a regular American, I guess.
No,
But
yeah.
I had to sit in the passenger seat, and if he even like looked away for 1 second, we could go off a cliff
Yeah.
up in El Yunque Mountains. I mean, it was pretty serious. And instead of creating a ton of anxiety about that secondary control, I was like, well, we could get into a car accident. It is very likely here. I read a lot of reviews. And I thought, yeah, but then the rental car, this, and what if that, and, the rest of the trip, and what if somebody dies and we have to take responsibility, or what if we go off the cliff? And I was
Yeah.
like, look, you gotta just not,
Yeah.
you gotta just deal with these thoughts because these are all real possibilities in life. And this is kind of a scary situation. But instead, I turned on the music. I turned on some like reggae music and I just
Yep.
had a blast. I didn't like, with the high desire for control I used to have, I would have been like, make sure that you're not looking at your phone, make sure that you're not this. He even cut
Yep.
a cop off, like directly cut a cop off. And I was like, you know, I normally probably would have started a fight over that or something like that.
Yeah.
But I was like, just let it go. Just let it go. Just go to the beach and have a great time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and I did. I didn't even worry about it. I just was eating junk food, looking out the window,
Yeah.
didn't care. It was,
That's amazing.
it's so freeing. It is like a superpower. You're like, I'll just handle it. Hopefully it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Those are all good examples. I I was networking with somebody today, and he said, "What was the biggest like when you got yourself thriving and feeling great or whatever? What was like the turning point where like things clicked and you felt good?" And I was like, "I know exactly what it was. It was when I realized I was being a perfectionist and that I was making myself crazy because of it. Instead of rereading the email 5 times before you send it, just reread it once. If there's a typo, it's fine. It doesn't matter." And that once I had that light bulb moment, I was like, where else in my life am I doing all this extra nonsense to try to be perfect and whatever? And then it was like addicting, well, not addicting, but it was like I need to find more areas where I'm making myself crazy and just stop doing it. And it was just such a stupid little light bulb moment, but it frees up a lot of energy, time. Just
Yeah.
like the pillows don't have to be perfect before you put Netflix on. That's just nonsense. You thought that they did, but they don't. Little stupid things like that. Like that's it. I was making myself crazy over nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they call that overthinking. And some people would say to me, well, you're making this harder than it has to be. And
Yep.
I think sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I think their desire for control is just too low,
Yep.
in my opinion. But I'm like, no, this is important. But each person can then kind of decide, and I think the way that you can kind of gauge, is this helpful or not? Is am I creating stress and anxiety over this, or is this really a helpful thing that's like benefiting me? So if it's making you not making you, if you're feeling more powerless, if you're feeling a sense of stress, it's not helpful. You're
Yeah.
definitely over. You're definitely making it too hard. Like
Yeah.
I was trying to figure that out, like with the ferry schedule for Puerto Rico, because I'm the only one that plans things. I'm the only one that like kind of knows what's going on. So I was messaging the Airbnb host, and he was like really chill about it. He's like, "You're not going to miss the ferry and get stranded on the island." He's like, "Don't worry, just have some drinks on the beach." And I thought, maybe I'm not being really thrivey right now. But it turns out that it was a good thing that I did what I did, because we would have got stranded on the island overnight and had absolutely nowhere to
Yeah.
go. And he was being way too chill about it because there were no tickets left when we got there. And so it was a really good thing that I did the research and the due diligence to understand how to plan that situation. And it ended up being perfect. Um, it was, I didn't stress out about some things like a taxi when I got
Yeah.
there. I just let it be and it worked out. But there were some details that I think that it is important to still care about. And
Yeah. Of course.
it's learning how and when to harness and manage those things in your life, that once you finish the program, you really that's kind of up to you.
Yeah. So that's such a good one. So the mom of the kid I just used in the example, the 17-year-old, she said, "I feel like I have to make my bed every morning or else I'm going to like not have a disciplined day." And I was like, "Why do you think that?" And she was like, "I don't know." And I was like, "It's just a belief. It's just a nonsense belief that you're living your life by, and it's screwing you up." And in that moment, she was like, "Oh yeah, I guess I I think I read this guy's book, and he was like a military guy, and he said if you don't make your bed, you're not disciplined." and that just stuck with her. And she's just living her. She's being like a, we gotta make the beds like a crazy person. But it's just all it was is just taking a step back, getting perspective, and being like, why am I doing this? Why do I believe so strongly that this has to be done? And it's not about being a slob. It's
Right.
just like exactly what you were just saying, going about your life, and initially at least until it becomes a habit, and just questioning like what you're doing. Why am I doing this? Is it important? Is it adding
Right.
value to my life? Why do I feel so compelled to do this? And more often than not, you're going to find that all the things that you're doing are not helpful. You have no idea why you believe that you need to be doing them.
Yeah.
And like me, with the perfectionism, then you just stop, and that's it. And you just start to get your life back in all these different areas, and it's crazy. It's just crazy how we just are in our own way and just screwing ourselves up constantly until we learn how to stop doing it.
Yeah. I know. I realize when I'm doing it to myself all the time, I'm like, ah, you're doing it. You got to stop
Yeah,
it. But it's so important not to beat yourself up about that.
that's
But I
true.
think like that
Yes.
that example you just gave, if she could just maybe reel that in a little bit, like Jordan Peterson talks about that. He talks about, um, I don't know if it was self agency or just a sense of responsibility, starting with, especially when you're teaching your kids with their bedrooms. And when you wake up every day, to have some structure like that. I think that is helpful. But if
Yeah,
she's feeling if she's creating a compulsion out of it, or feeling like if she doesn't do it, that everything else hinges on it, that's not helpful.
that's what it
It,
was. The
yeah,
second one. Just a ridiculous thing. If I don't make the bed, I'm not disciplined. I'm not going to have a good day.
yeah.
It's just
You can
a
keep
nonsense, crazy belief, you know?
this, but you could still keep the behavior if you change the belief about it. If you say,
Yeah,
hey, this thing has been helpful for other people. It's probably, it's been helpful for me in the past, but not absolutely necessary. That's fine too, but
yeah. And getting perspective and being like, wait, the author of the book was like running an army barracks. It's
yeah,
obviously that's going to impact his day. It's not going to impact my day as a mom getting my kid to hockey practice.
yeah,
Doesn't mean I'm not disciplined. I'm not going to get kicked out of I don't know, the platoon or anything like that.
yeah, yeah. And each person can kind of decide, like, hey, do I want to do this? Is this helpful? I love that question. Is this helpful?
Yeah,
It's helpful.
yeah, yeah.
it
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
it is. It's like is this thing taking from my life? Is it adding to my life? Is it helping me? Is it hurting me? And being able to have that perspective, that objective perspective, feels so powerful. To be like I don't make my bed. Like pretty rarely do I make my bed, but that
I don't
doesn't
make fun.
mean that I'm not going to have a structured day. I'm like, that doesn't really matter to me. Oh well.
Yes.
Yeah, but the other things do matter to me. Like it matters to me to have a nice clean kitchen.
Yep. Me.
So yeah.
Yep.
It's funny how you just have to realize if you're making yourself crazy, if you're causing problems in your own life, like you said, and then it's like once you get that skill set, then you kind of streamline and clean up the rest of your life.
Yeah. It's easy. Once you have that light bulb moment, it's easy to find all the areas that you've been making yourself crazy in.
I don't have the other questions. I'm sorry, but is there anything else you wanted to talk about, or like while we're recording?
Well, I would say if any of this massive audience that we have here, if anybody has a question, we would be happy to answer it. We're doing this to be helpful, um, and no, nothing is off limits. I mean, we if you guys don't know, Lauren had emetophobia forever. If you don't know what that is, it's a debilitating fear of throwing up. She overcame it and is thriving in all areas of life. And I had 24 years of panic attacks, anxiety, stuff like that, and overcame it. And so now we help people do the exact same thing. And now is the time to get some free information. If you have any questions about anything really, mental health related. If not, that's okay too. Um, I'm seeing what I have here in my notes.
I mean, you could bring up the other three questions and we can go through them if you
Yeah,
want.
so how somebody might feel as though their identity or their sense of self could evolve as they work through their mental health challenges. So I think that's like, this is all I know. I've had this for 20 years. This is me. I'm the guy. I'm the panicky guy. That's me. Like I can't imagine my life not being that. Does that mean I'm gonna have to be in more social situations? I think that's what we were trying to get at. Like if somebody's afraid to work on their mental health because they feel like they won't even know who they are anymore, maybe. I don't know. Does that make sense? I'm not good at asking the questions.
No, you are. I know, I think you are. I think, it's really difficult not to talk about the Thrive program in that sense because the difference is that you don't, I would just say to a person, don't even ask that, like, not to be harsh, but it doesn't matter. Don't even ask that question right now. Just do the program
Yeah,
because you're not even going to think about that when you're done. If you're just speaking in general
that's a
terms,
good point.
that's a little bit different. Um, you'd have to address kind of those thinking styles again, probably. But in terms of the Thrive program, it's different. Like you don't have to focus in on your problems. You don't have to focus in on how long you've had something, or your I did write the article about emetophobia and identity to kind of discuss that, but you don't really need to.
Yeah,
Uh, if you want to talk about it, you can, but it's not necessary because when you're on the other side, as I like to say, it won't even matter. You'll love who you are so much more that that person, in a sense, is like unrecognizable. When I think about the person that I was, I mean, it's, it's, I mean, in a sense, it's hard. It's hard to realize the degree of that loss of how many years you've and opportunities you've missed and the pain that you've endured for no reason.
yeah,
But it takes a strong person to confront that and say, yeah, I did do that to myself, but
yeah,
that's okay. I'm going to spend the rest of my life not doing that. And
yeah.
that's taking responsibility for it. Um, it was so bad for me at one point. I specifically remember one night I had a boyfriend at the time and we were watching a movie on a couch or something. And I started creating a ton of anxiety about being sick. Because I think somebody he knew was sick or something. So I was scared I was going to get it. I ended up outside, freezing cold weather in New Jersey, in the grass, just on my back, shaking, like ridiculously shaking. I could, for like hours, I was out there
Wow.
just crying and shaking. And he was just like, what do I do with this? And he ended up just going home. And I've never had anybody break up with me over it, but it certainly took so much out of my relationships and my time that I could have just been loving my life. And
Yeah,
there's no getting worse. You're only going to get better. Like, can you? It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what you're struggling with. Like if it's obsessive compulsive or
mm,
whatever. Like what's on the other side is absolutely better. There's no question. Just don't even. It's not even a question. You want to
yeah.
get there.
But the crazy thing is it can get worse. And you and I talked about this the other day because your world closes in on you. Because if you start saying, so I'll use me for an example. Let's say that if I have panic attacks and I'm like, all right, I had a panic attack in an interview, which I did once. I got the job, but that's besides the point. But like, okay, now I can't have interviews. I can't go on interviews. I'm not, no, okay, so then you can't
Right.
work. And then you just, I'm not going to leave my house because I don't have panic attacks at home. I feel great at home. That part didn't happen, but that's how people become like agoraphobic, and your world gets smaller and smaller and smaller until you don't even want to leave the house. And then at that point, you might create depression because you're so down on the fact that you're not leaving the house, and it's just,
Oh, for sure.
yeah,
I guess I didn't mean it like that. I agree with what you're saying. I mean, it affects everything. It's like, oh, a fear of being sick. It means you can't have kids. I mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it is it is a these things have very real life consequences. I guess I meant more like if you're not thriving, and this is a topic for another day, even just being resilient, it's really not good enough. It's not.
yeah,
When you have the capability and everybody has the opportunity to learn how to thrive and love your life and not have any limitations, what I mean is, why even be somewhere on the spectrum? Why even be anywhere like below half? Or,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. You don't want to just live, be anxious the whole time, pay taxes, and just die. That's horrible. That is
yeah,
horrible. So I'm sure some people will be like, no, I'm fine with that, but I think the vast majority of the people would agree, no, that's not really what I want to do with the limited amount of time that I have
yeah,
here.
yeah. And that goes back to perspective. We just, I think everybody gets so caught up in this rat race and this hamster wheel of just like 9 to 5, and they forget to live. They forget to live. They forget
Yeah.
what it's like to look into the eyes of a barracuda.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's a good one. Should we end it there? That's a good ending. I like that. Unless you have something else, because I don't really think I do, but that was good.
Hey, is anybody on?
It looks like one person
I,
is.
I can't see anymore, but
Yeah, Nikki.
oh, hello. Um, okay, well, off the record then, I kind of messed up with not writing the questions down. Sorry about that.
She said she's there. Or they said they're
Oh,
there.
hi. I don't know why I can't see. That's so
That's
strange.
so annoying. You can ask us a question, Nikki, if you'd like to. We're happy to help, as long as it's not like financial advice or anything like that.
Legal, medical.
Legal advice, yeah.
Yeah, I can't see in the. Are there comments? No,
No.
no. Okay.
Oh, wait. No. Yeah.
I know. I love like getting random questions that we're not ready for.
Oh,
It's fun.
no questions right now. All right, so we can end it there if you want, unless you have something else. I think that was good though.
Um, yeah, that's fine. Um, we'll just make sure we're more structured next time, and uh, if you want to go over some of the other rebuttals, or I really want to definitely talk about kind of like I said, accepting brutal facts of your reality. I think that could be a really interesting one.
Yeah.
Create content out of, uh, or maybe just touching on the fear of failure again. I don't know if I answered that as well as I really could have. Caught off guard a little bit there,
Yeah,
but
that could be good. We could go deeper into that because everybody thinks they're gonna fail. I think it's human nature to just think that you're special, whether it's good or bad. I'm gonna be the one that fails. It's gonna be me. I'll be the one, the only one. I think everybody thinks that, and that, that's why it's nice to be like, well, you know, we've had 8-year-olds successfully do this and 85-year-olds successfully do this. Like, trust me, it's not going to be you that fails.
yeah, yeah.
um,
I think it was a little bit kind of sobering for me on that point. If I could kind of draw it back to like the kayaking, to just look around and realize like not everybody is where you think that they are mentally. You, in a sense, like I think a lot of people think that everybody else is doing so much better than them,
oh yeah,
so much healthier than them, and never afraid of things, or and it's
yep,
just that's not true. So it's okay to feel that. I would say it's absolutely okay to feel that way in the beginning, and there's no problem with that. And that doesn't mean the program's not going to work or that you can never overcome whatever it is. Like there is an answer for everything, and you can do it.
Yeah, everybody's dealing with something. They don't want you to think that, which is why they don't. Oh, the vast majority of people won't
Yeah.
post the struggling parts of their lives online. Some people do. There are some people who show that part, but most people they think they look like they have it figured out. You know, you're not gonna like walk around in public showing
Right.
like everything on the inside. I don't know. I think it would almost be harder to do that. I think because we're just like brought up to like not show our emotions, but everybody's battling something. But you
Yeah.
can learn to battle a lot less and have the battles be way easier, which is a good takeaway, I think, from all of this. Life is still going to slap you
Yeah.
around, but it's, you know, you can learn to respond in different ways, more helpful ways. And like you just said, look, would you say, look in the eyes of the barracuda?
Yeah. That was a little scary. Yeah. And then I also saw a baby barracuda. He was only like this big, and it reminds you of like I don't know, kind of made me think of the spider example. Like
Oh, yeah,
he was so
yeah,
cute and little, and I kind of chased him around too.
yeah. That's what Jen would have been doing. That's so funny.
It was so cute. Yeah. Um,
All right. Well, I'm going to end it. It was
okay.
nice talking to you. And Nikki, wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful night or morning or whatever it is. And if you'd like to join us next time, we'd be happy to answer any questions. And that's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Bye.
Bye.